Hi there. So in today's video I want to talk a bit about regime theory. This is something that my eldest son was talking to me about a couple of days ago. So he's a student of politics and international relations, and he was telling me about regime theory, which comes from security studies, and it's the idea that rules and sets of rules for nations can be categorized by two characteristics, so their formality and their compliance. So the formality is the extent to which these rules are sort of written down and codified and transparent. And compliance is really about how much these rules are actually followed or enforced. So you can think, given these two attributes, that like regimes or nations end up in one of four boxes. So there's high formality and low compliance. So that might be something like a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, where those rules have been really laid down and signed up to, but they are selectively followed. There's high formality and high compliance, and you've got things like NATO membership, UN rules, some aspects of UN and Geneva conventions. You know, these are things which are not only written down, but they're really enforced. Then you've got low formality and high compliance. So this is about unwritten rules. Many societies don't have actually written laws around things like civilian murders. It's just assumed and naturally understood that those things are prohibited. And then finally, you've got low formality and low compliance, and they're essentially chaotic regimes. You know, there's maybe no regime exists. So what has this got to do with the workplace? Well, it did sound very familiar, really, to the journey from startup to scale up. So, you know, when you start off, you're generally in either the chaotic, low formality, low compliance type of world. But then you start getting your act together. The way things are done around here is starting to become established. So the rules are there and people are starting to follow them. They're just not very well written down. And this is that sort of very classic early startup stage, low process, low rigor, but actually there's quite a lot of alignment. Now, as the organization scales, this is not enough. You need more things to try and glue the organisation together, keep it coherent and keep it aligned. And this is really where workplaces go one of two ways. So they either go down the high formality, low compliance route, whereby you might do things like talk about your values and have them written down and have them on the website and have them on mugs in the kitchen, but they are largely ignored. Or you might have high formality, high compliance. So you end up in a situation whereby you can't move because there's a procedure over here or there's a policy over here, and there's a lot of flexibility goes and a lot of enjoyment goes because essentially we just become a group of rule takers, and we know how society currently feels about that. So which interesting questions arise here? I think that there's, as you're moving from one phase and the other, then at the earlier stage, because people are essentially learning how things are done around here from learning to see what other people are doing, that can often break when you're scaling really quickly. There's just not enough time to select for people who are going to naturally get it, and there's not really enough time to absorb people into the culture and make sure that they have become aligned before they start taking decisions themselves. So I think you've got a lot of careful thinking to do around this stage of a scale-up's growth. Which rules should you enforce rigorously? Which rules, where is there some leeway? Where do you want to allow some wriggle room? Might some flexibility be actually helpful under some circumstances? And there's some other things there to think about. How do we signpost the rules? To what extent do we formalise them and write them down? And then how can we justify it when we are selectively enforcing rules? Well, we're basically sort of got somewhere on between compliance and non-compliance. Essentially, there's maybe one rule for senior management and another rule for the rest of the organisation. Can we justify where we've ended up, even if changing it might get some better results in the short term? And also, finally, how can we stop this process from being abused? How can we stop situations where it's do as I say, not do as I do? And I just think they're really interesting questions about that transition from informal but effective startup world to more formal, more structured scale-up mode. A lot of stuff can get lost and broken on that journey. It doesn't necessarily need to. And part of the solution to stop stuff getting broken or value being destroyed, I think, is to think about some of these questions that are in the forefront of this kind of regime theory that's come from international relations. Okay, interesting thoughts there from the conversation with my son. I'd be interested in hearing if you've got some views on this yourself. But apart from that, that's it for now. I'm Gareth, and I will see you on the next video.